Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayavdire Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtiki Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Mukham karoti vachanam pangam langyate girim yatkripātamaham vande Shri Gurudena Taranam Paramanandam Madhavam. So last week we had started the 12th chapter and done the first section of it. And so we plan to complete the 12th chapter, and time permitting, we'll have discussions on the 12th chapter or any of the chapters prior to that. So who can tell me what was the question that Arjuna asks Krishna, and why does he ask him? Vamshi Gopal Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I think the question Arjuna asked is which type of worship is better, like devotees who do worship the impersonal feature or the personal feature.
Very good. And why does he ask the question?
I think for everyone's benefit, and also I think that's
close. You had the first part right. Thank you, Prabhu. Very good. Ajit Krishna Prabhu?
That's because he wants to assess his own situation, whether he is doing the right thing by being attracted to the personal form, because he was more attracted to the personal than the impersonal form.
Exactly. So for these two reasons, as Vamsi Gopal Prabhu says, that for the benefit of others, and also because in the previous chapter, when Krishna shows his impersonal form as the Paramatma and then the Vishnu Rupa, Arjuna is not much attracted. In fact, he's a little perturbed. So he asks Krishna to revert to his two-armed form, but then he wants some validation that is my position okay? So who can tell me how does Krishna compare these two forms of realizations? Yes, Prabhu, Bhaktivinoda Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I think Krishna says that the personal form devotion is easier, whereas the impersonal form devotion is very is troublesome, but at the end they might reach Krishna.
Okay, good. And so he says that the impersonal realization is difficult, the journey is long. What is the single most important quality that a practitioner must develop when he or she is following the impersonal path? Okay, somebody else? Okay, go ahead, Ajit Krishna Prabhu.
So basically, they have to disengage the senses, which is the opposite of bhakti, where you engage the senses, except you just engage in Krishna's service instead of sense gratification.
Not quite. Close, but not quite. So Krishna is very specific about the quality that needs to be developed. And the quality that he stresses is that first one needs to develop complete equanimity. Which is the person being undisturbed. So your answer is correct, because equanimity is a result of disengaging the senses. But regardless of whatever the underlying methodology is, Krishna says that one needs to be equipoised in all situations, right? So he says that that's the most important quality. Then we also noticed that there was one other big difference between the two paths that Krishna brings forth, between the path of personal realization and impersonal realization. Anybody remembers what was that? Naradi Mataji?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Is it that the devotee always have Krishna to support them, while in the other yogas they have more chance for them because they are doing it themselves?
Very good. So yes, that was the big difference, that when Krishna is recommending the path of impersonalization, all the effort is on the jiva, no help from Krishna. Right? And Krishna says, at last, it'll be a long journey, at last you can achieve me, but it's always you. And then he says, Klesho Dukham, that very difficult for one who is embodied. Right? But when he speaks about the devotees, then what does he say? He says, for them, I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. Now, so not only is he saying swift, as opposed to the path is long, but I am the swift deliverer, right? So Krishna is talking about his own personal help that he gives in this journey. So this is the first section that essentially establishes the superiority of Bhakti, and basically two processes are only contrasted here, impersonal and Bhakti. And Krishna is very unequivocal in how the path is easy, the path is facilitated by his help, and the destination is conducive to the constitutional position of the jiva. So now we will discuss the verses 8 to 12, which essentially is what is famously known as the yoga ladder. So let me share my screen. Okay. Share screen. Okay, so this was the discussion that we had, Krishna asking Arjuna for clarification, and Arjuna asking Krishna for clarification, and Krishna basically giving a conclusive answer. Now he essentially is expanding on the answer that he has given. So what needs to go in? I made a mistake in sharing. Let's see. I'll try once again. Okay. So this is Krishna describing the yoga ladder. So the yoga ladder is actually more of a yoga rope, because the ladder indicates ascension, and Krishna essentially gives the descending path. He starts from the highest goal and then goes to successive lower goals in the verses. So one can imagine that the jiva is at the bottom of a well. And if we imagine that, we'll get a sense of Krishna's extreme mercy. So there's a jiva at the bottom of the well, and Krishna is then dropping a ladder for him from the top. And then the ladder is dropped, and the jiva says, too high for me, cannot reach it. And Krishna then drops it further down, and she says, still too high for me. So Krishna continues to drop the ladder until the jiva is able to grasp it. So that's how we can visualize the yoga ladder. It's a descending path from the stage of perfection to the stage of one preliminary stages of where one is aspiring for perfection. So 12.8, Mayeva manadhastva mai buddhim niveshaya nivashyasi mayeva ata urdhvam na samshaya. So Krishna says that just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always without a doubt. So this is the highest stage of Shuddha Bhakti, pure devotional service. And you can appreciate the simplicity of the definition of this stage. Right? Krishna is just saying that you fix your mind on me and engage all your intelligence in me. Right? So, so the mind is where the senses are reposed. Right? The mind is sometimes considered to be the chief of the senses, because essentially the senses are connected to the mind. So with all one's senses and with mind and intelligence, one is fixed on Krishna. So this is Ananya Bhakti. In the verse, Krishna uses mind 3 times. Right? He says, Mayeva manadashva, May buddhim niveshaya. Then Nivashyasi Mayeva. So the acharyas say that he uses 3 times for emphasis. That me, my personal form only. Right? Acharyas also say that he says me, not my impersonal form. Me, not my Paramatma form. Me only. So he is excluding the worship of other forms in Shuddha Bhakti. Now, worshipping the other forms of Krishna is transcendence, right? Because it's not material. But only the personal realization of Krishna is considered to be Shuddha Bhakti, because only at this stage can one render service to Krishna. Because you can render service to a person, you can't render service to energy, cannot render service to Paramatma. You can only render, well, the service to Paramatma is meditation, but you can't render personal service. But the only one where you can have these rasas in service is to the personal form of Krishna. So this is the highest stage of Shuddha Bhakti. Now, what if somebody is not at that stage? So clearly this is not a stage that you can attain simply based on your determination. That, okay, from tomorrow I'm going to be Shuddha Bhakta. Right? It's almost like saying that you ask a woman, a girl, that you go and fall in love with that man. It's not going to happen. Prabhupada gives this example that when at least in earlier times in India, the man and the woman would marry without even seeing one another, without talking to one another. So obviously the woman had not developed any love for the man. But how did it develop in time? When the woman did what was the duty of a wife, the man did what was the duty of the husband, as is recommended in the scriptures. And then simply by following that, then love appeared. Right. So now Krishna is saying that this is a stage of spontaneous love for me. If you cannot attain this, let me give you the next lower stage. So this is verse 12.9. Atha chittam samadhatum na shaknoshi mai stiram abhyasa yogena tato mam ichhaptam dhananjaya. So he says, my dear Arjun, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. Right? So this is a very relevant verses to practicing devotees, because this verse is talking about sadhana, Vaidhi Bhakti. So Krishna is saying, if you cannot be spontaneously attracted to me, you execute bhakti through the regulative principles of Vaidhi Bhakti. So regulative principles are with do's and don'ts. Do this, chant 16 rounds, do deity worship, follow Ekadashi, serve Vaishnavas, don't take intoxication. So there are do's and don'ts. And the only thing that the devotee has to do is to follow these rules and regulations with sincerity. Does not even, at this point, does not need to have strong attraction for Krishna. Needs to have strong attraction to the process, but not necessarily to Krishna. So this practice is called Abhyas Rupa Bhakti. So conventionally we call it Vaidhi Bhakti, but in the third line of the verse, Krishna says Abhyas Yogena Tato. So Abhyas means practice. You practice until you become perfect. Now, what does Krishna say that where will this stage take you to? He says that Maam Ichhaptam Dhananjaya. So in this way, you will develop a desire to attain me. So he does not say that in this way, you will attain me. So the purport of this is the only way to attain Krishna is Shuddha Bhakti. Right? So when one practices Vaidhi Bhakti, then by sincerely following the rules and regulations of Bhakti, spontaneous Bhakti appears on its own. Like as they say, that fake it until you make it. Now, of course, this is not faking in that sense, but you practice it until you are at a stage of spontaneous devotion. In this verse, Krishna calls Arjun Dhananjaya. So Dhananjaya means, Dhan means wealth and Jaya means winner of wealth. So Arjun got this name because when Yudhishthira was going to do the Rajasuya Yajna, then Arjun traveled over a large part of the globe and he conquered different kingdoms and got wealth, because you need a lot of wealth to do the Yajna. So he conquered a lot of wealth, and that's why he called the name Dhananjaya. Krishna is calling Arjun Dhananjaya over here, indicating that you have won a lot of wealth. Now it is time for you to win the real wealth of Krishna Prema. So this is the second stage of the yoga ladder. third stage is given in verse 12:10. Abhyasya smartosi matkarma param bhava madartam api karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. If you cannot practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then just try to work for me. Because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. So the previous two stages require surrender. Whether one is in spontaneous love of Krishna or whether one is following Vaidhi Bhakti, both of them are based on surrender, which comes from mind and intelligence. That the person basically consciously makes this decision that Jivere Sarupa Hoye Krishna Nitya Das. In one stage, he is realizing that. In the other stage, he is intellectually accepting that. But that surrender is there. But what if one is not at that stage, where the mind and intelligence are not willing to surrender? So Krishna is recommending Karma Mishra Bhakti, right? So what he is saying is that you simply work for me. So mind and intelligence are not, the surrender of the mind and intelligence is not needed that much. So what is Karma Mishra Bhakti? By Dravyadan, by Shramdan, by Vachandan. So Dravyadan is by money, Shram is by effort, Vachan is by words, action, mind. So this is still Bhakti, but at a lower level. So Prabhupada in the purport, he explains how to do this. He says to practice the regulative principles of Bhakti, one should, under the guidance of an expert spiritual master, follow certain principles, which is like rise early in the morning, take bath, enter the temple, offer prayers, chant Hare Krishna, collect flowers, offer to deity, cook foodstuffs, offer to the deity, take prasadam, and so on. So one should constantly hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam from pure devotees. So this is Srila Prabhupada is essentially explaining the process of Vaidhi Bhakti. Now, in Karma Mishra Bhakti, while the person has attachment to Krishna, because the surrender is still not there, the person first does the activity and then offers the results to Krishna. So it is still tuned towards Krishna, that the person is doing devotional service, but using karma as the medium to execute devotional service. Right? And we all have, so most of us are in either different points at 12.10 or 12.9. Right? We are at that stage. That's, sometimes we give some amount of charity to the temple based on what we earn. Sometimes we will do help in the temple. They need some help in cleaning or cutting in the kitchen. We'll do that help. Right. So the focus is that we first pick the work that we like, but then the result we give to Krishna. The 12.10 and 12.11 are a little confusing, and as you can see, that 12.11 actually goes to the lower end of the yoga run. So let's do 12.11. And then the two verses in turn, and the two stages in turn, 12.12. So 12:11, Krishna says that if, however, you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act giving up all results of your work and try to be self-situated. Right? So the difference between 12:10 and 12:11 is, in 12:11, Krishna is not in the picture. Right? In 12:10, he clearly says that Madatham api karmani, that try to work for me. So he's still the center. Here, Krishna is not in the center, right? He just says, then try to act giving up all results of your work and try to be self-situated. So, because Krishna is speaking about karma, he speaks this also as a side note, even though sequentially it's at the bottom, but it's kind of like saying that somebody asks you for the itinerary and you say that I'll first go to Washington, D.C., then I will go to Houston, then I will go to California, and while you're speaking about California, you can say, well, California is very hot this time of the year, and then I will go to somewhere else. So because you're speaking about that topic and there is a related topic that may not come in the sequence, but still it's related, so you speak it. So Krishna is following that protocol, that he's speaking about karma, he's speaking about karma Mishra Bhakti, but while he's speaking about karma, he also speaks about what is this? This is basically, essentially, Karma Kand. So what happens in Karma Kand? That you follow the dictates of the scripture, you engage in pious activities. And this way you will develop, you will be, so self-situated means that you become, you develop equanimity, you get Atma Darshan, you understand your senses are external to you. So these are essentially a mode of goodness. So, so essentially this is not bhakti, but this is piety. Right? This is piety performed with detachment. Right? This is nishkam karma. So there is detachment, that is nishkam, and karma means that it is as it is recommended by the scriptures. In 1846, it is stated that even if one serves Krishna indirectly without acknowledging him, there is still benefit of action for such a person. He will gradually come to understand the position of Krishna. This process of karma phal tyag, though material, will purify the desires of the practitioner and may attract the mercy of a devotee. So Srila Prabhupada is making this point that Krishna is still putting this on the yoga ladder because it may attract the mercy of a devotee. So piety is not a condition for bhakti, but devotees may be attracted to people who are pious, and they may engage them in bhakti. If you read the purport in 12:11, Srila Prabhupada presents a different mood that you probably know where very few other places he writes in this mood. Maybe this is the only place where he is actually glorifying material piety. In almost all the other places, he condemns it. Because he basically says all that it gives you is another birth in the material world. Maybe the birth as a deva, but there also janma mrityu jara vyadi. So he's constantly condemning material piety. But here he writes that that he says that when one is not even interested in the activities of Krishna consciousness, then one should give charity to some hospital or some other social institution. Chaitanya Ras Prabhu, do you want to wait until I finish the discussion?
Sure, Prabhu, I can write down.
Okay, thank you. So, where was I? So he says that Krishna consciousness gives charity to some hospital. No, I'm sorry. He said if one is not interested in Krishna consciousness, then one can give charity to social institution. So by giving up your hard-earned money, you develop detachment. Otherwise, you have this sense of that aham karta aham bhogi. I am doing, I have to enjoy. But then you start giving it away, then at least the bhogi mentality is mitigated. Right? So then Prabhupada further goes on to say that, of course, Krishna consciousness is not dependent on any other experience because Krishna consciousness itself can purify one's mind. But if there are impediments to accepting Krishna consciousness, one may try to give up the results of his actions. In that respect, social service, community service, national service, service for one's country, etc., may be accepted so that someday one may come to the stage of pure devotional service to the Lord. So, Prabhupada is recognizing the fact that it's on the yoga ladder means that it can lead to it, but it requires mercy of the devotee because the person does not have bhakti. So the devotee needs to give him bhakti and then needs purification of the consciousness of the person. Okay, so this essentially is the lowest stage. Let's go to the verse 12, which talks about the other two stages. That if you cannot take to this practice, then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge. Better than knowledge, however, is meditation. And better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of action, for by such renunciation, one can attain peace of mind. So when Krishna is saying, if you cannot take to this practice, he's referring to 12.10, right? So because 12.12 is a side note, or I'm sorry, 12.11 is a side note. When he says you cannot take to this practice, he's essentially talking about karma mishra bhakti. If you cannot do karma mishra bhakti, then follow the process of astang and gyan, right? So he says that better than gyan is astang. So he's basically talking about these two processes. So gyan and astang, they are considered to be indirect processes of bhakti, right? So while they are leading to bhakti, they will not necessarily lead to personal realization. They could, but not necessarily. So that's why they're considered to be indirect paths. So this is essentially the yoga ladder. The next slide also talks about it in a little bit more graphic way, that one begins the process by following karma kanda, which is piety. The big thing that comes through piety is faith in the scriptures. So one is beginning to trust the scriptures. And then that trust extends to the other parts of the scriptures which talk about the surrender to the Supreme Lord. Right? So following this is Gyan Yoga, which is essentially self-realization, study of the scriptures, Astang Yoga, meditation, then Karma Mishra Bhakti, one is actively surrendering the results to for devotion, then followed by Sadhana Bhakti, and then the highest stage is Shuddha Bhakti. And the destination, so Karma, if one stays at that stage, destination is heavenly planets. Gyan Yoga, if one stays at the stage, the destination is Brahman. Astang Yoga, it is Paramatma. And the other three processes are processes that directly lead to Krishna. So when one is practicing Karma Mishra Bhakti, then they will eventually be purified to practice Sadhana Bhakti. They will eventually be purified to practice Shuddha Bhakti and reach Krishna. So Prabhupada writes, and this he summarizes the yoga ladder by saying that in summary, to reach the personality of Godhead, the highest goal, there are two processes. One is by gradual development, and the other process is direct. Devotional service and Krishna consciousness is the direct method. And the other method involves renouncing the fruits of one's activities. Then one come to the stage of knowledge, then to the stage of meditation, and then to the stage of understanding the super soul, then to the stage of Supreme Personality of Godhead. One may either take the step-by-step process or the direct process. The direct process is not possible for everyone. Therefore, the indirect process is also good. Right? So one may question that if the direct process has a higher goal and it is easier, then why even bother giving the indirect process? Prabhupada explained because it's not possible for everyone. Right? That analogy of Krishna dropping the ladder, that if only the ladder has one rung, then the person who's deep enough in the well will not be able to reach it. Which is why Krishna has lower rungs. So this is essentially the yoga ladder. So I want to go ahead and finish the chapter and then open up for any Q&A. So this is, why does Krishna act alternate paths? He wants to engage us as per our propensities. All paths are designed to ultimately lead to him. Right? However, the longer path, the greater the chance of a detour. Like somebody may follow Gyan Yoga and just be detoured into Brahman realization. And there's a potential of all domains. Right? Somebody may abandon it completely. But the path of bhakti, it's the safest, fastest, and most enjoyable. So it's the bestest path. Okay, so now Krishna is talking about the qualities that endear one to him. And that will essentially take us to the end of the chapter. So Krishna talks about 36 qualities in this verse. 5 of them are in relationship to Krishna. 5 are in relationship to other jivas. And 26 qualities are developed in themselves by the jiva. So Krishna puts these 36 qualities here for us to meditate on and develop in ourselves. So there are 2 ways of looking at these qualities. So when Krishna says that these qualities are good, then one can use these qualities as a barometer, as an indicator of one's own progress. Right? There are some people who, even though they may take to devotion, they are very contentious, argumentative. So it's a barometer that while you have taken to bhakti, still process needs to be adopted more so. But when one sees these qualities, so Prabhupada says that when one decorates Krishna, Krishna decorates the person. How does Krishna decorate the person? By bestowing these qualities on the person. So when one sees these qualities are manifesting, then one can understand that one's bhakti is fructifying. If they are not manifesting or the opposite qualities are manifesting, then one needs to sit down and have a conversation with one's spiritual master. That I've been practicing, I've been chanting, but I still have fill in the blank. I still have envy for others, or I still am not able, I deal disrespectfully with others, I'm not attracted to prasadam, right? So something is missing here, and then that's where the conversation helps. So I'm not going to go through these 36 qualities, but definitely recommend that you read them carefully for this reason. The most important quality in this 36 quality appears in the very last verse, right? So the quality that is considered to be the basis of all the other qualities is faith, Shraddha. Right? So if you notice that in this last 7 verses, from 12, 13 to 19, Krishna concludes the verse by saying, Me Priya, that one who has these qualities is dear to me, indicating his fondness for these qualities. But in the very last verse where Shraddha appears, Krishna says, Ativa me Priya. So Ativa means extremely, extremely dear to me. So such intense affection Krishna reserves only for his devotees. The previous verse spoke about qualities that make a person dear to Krishna. This verse talks about the process that helps develop those qualities. That if one has faith in Krishna, then through that faith one develops these qualities. And Krishna's great affection indicates that, really speaking, he's appreciating those who follow the process. And so the fact that he's appreciating the qualities is only symptomatic. What he's actually appreciating is the fact that those who follow this process manifest these qualities as a byproduct. But he is indicating his affection for these qualities as a way of saying that I'm actually affectionate to those who follow the process of bhakti. Therefore, his real affection is directed to the process of bhakti and to the practitioner of the process. Right? So Krishna in 12:20 he says, Yetu. Yetu means but those who. Right? Initially he was talking about this person, everybody says, but those who. So it indicates a differentiation of this verse from the previous verse. So if you look at these qualities, you will see that there is a common theme that develops, which resonates with the theme that Krishna presented at the beginning of the chapter. And there are qualities that repeat also. Some of them repeat, at least one quality repeats word to word, but there are other qualities that are very close to one another. And essentially, Krishna is talking about equanimity, right? So the quality that he's appreciating is those who are equipoised, undisturbed, right? So same point that he made in the earlier chapter. There it was talking in the context of impersonal Brahman realization. Here, he speaks about those qualities, but then he predicates it that when one is developing those qualities while practicing the process of bhakti, that person is very, very dear to me. Right? So that's why Krishna is making that distinction in the last verse. So while other paths may lead towards Krishna, the glory of bhakti is that it leads Krishna to the devotee. Krishna is very much attracted by bhakti, so much so that Krishna becomes controlled by his devotees. Krishna is otherwise attainable, but he is conquered by love. Prabhupada said this is the summary of the chapter. The question of who is better? One who is engaged in the path of impersonal Brahma, or one who is engaged in the personal service of the personality of Godhead was raised by Arjuna, and the Lord replied to him so explicitly that there is no doubt that devotional service to the personality of Godhead is the best process of all spiritual realizations. So this is the end of the chapter. So now we can open up for any discussions. So we have Bhakti Vinod Prabhu and Chaitanya Prabhu. Please go ahead. Bhakti Vinod Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So on the yoga ladder, so you mentioned karma kanda. So karma kanda, is it not different than nishkam karma? Because karma kanda you're doing with still a desire, right? Your karma is there, but it is based on the injunctions of the scriptures. But in nishkam karma, you don't have your nishkam, right? You don't have the desire, like you're not taking the fruits. So would it not be two steps, karma kanda, then nishkam karma?
Yes and no, because the whole purpose of karma kand is to lead one to nishkam. So if you look at the details of the karma kand, while the processes are there that allow somebody to enjoy, but they come with a lot of regulations, prohibitions, and injunctions, right? So what does karma kand say about grahastha? What is the main duty of a grahastha as per karma kand? Charity. Right. Now, grahastha is the only ashram that is allowed to earn money in an ideal society as per the Vedic injunctions. Along with that comes also the injunction to give away money. So they are not synonymous. You're absolutely right that one can perform karma kand with sakam, do it, but karma kand is designed that if one is following it, it gradually develops this detachment from the fruits.
Okay, so karma kanda is leading to the it's designed to take you to nishkam.
Right. Right.
Okay, I have follow-up questions, Prabhu. Can I, or should I wait till others?
Go ahead. You have the mic.
Okay. So then, Prabhu, the other question I had was on verse number 12, where before going to verse number 12, you said in the yoga ladder is karma mishra bhakti. Is it the same as karma yoga? Because then it is yoga is connection with God. So karma mishra bhakti, because will it be synonymous, karma mishra with karma yoga?
Conventionally, it's synonymous because generally speaking, when we say yoga, it is linking with transcendence. If you have to be meticulous, then karma yoga basically means anything that is transcendental, not material. So you could be performing your activities without a desire to enjoy it, but not surrendering it to Krishna. Right. So that could also be karma yoga. So the definition of yoga is linking to something that is transcendent. Now, transcendence could be Brahman or could be Krishna or could be anything that is not material. Right? So typically speaking, karma yoga, because transcendence gets linked to Krishna. But if you have to be more pedantic, then you would want to say that, and that's why the acharyas say that this is karma mishra bhakti. So when you say bhakti, there is no ambiguity about it. Krishna is right there in the center of it.
Thank you, Prabhu. And then the final question I had is on the verse 12, where Krishna says, better than knowledge, however, is meditation, and better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of action, for by such renunciation, one can attain peace of mind. So here saying better than meditation is this renunciation of fruits of action. So what is that? This seems like Nishkam Karma, but Nishkam Karma is lower than Ashtang. So
Right. So I spoke about it when I was describing the yoga ladder. So this statement, it points to Karma Mishra Bhakti. So because of the presence of Bhakti, it automatically becomes superior. Otherwise, then you have this contradiction. How can karma be higher than Gyan and Astha? After that statement has been made, that it is not. So if you go through the explanation, if you consider 12:11 as high to 12:10, and then after that 12 comes, so then you can understand then he's pointing to Karma Mishra. He's not pointing to Nishkam Karma.
okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Chaitanya, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. In the discussion we had, we said piety does attract devotees, right? So my or most of my discussions with my relatives and others is we keep saying, or we keep hearing that mercy of the devotees is costless. With that, how do we understand this concept that piety does attract devotees when we are saying mercy is costless?
So I remember this question was asked to a sannyasi, and he gave this example that you're out book distributing, and there are two benches. There are two people sitting on the benches. One person is basically he has a bottle of liquor in his hand. He has a cigarette in his hand. He hasn't shaved and bathed. His hairs are unkempt. And there is another person who is clean, neat, well dressed. Who will you approach to give the book? Right? So while, and Prabhupada makes this point, that while there are no material considerations to bhakti, but there are factors that can influence it. The whole idea of ahitukim, causeless, meaning that it's up to the devotee. In some cases, the devotees may approach the person, thinking that person is more in need of mercy. But the way the example goes, that because the people who are in the mode of goodness, they've already trained themselves to follow the scriptures. They've already trained control of senses. They've already trained themselves to be in consideration of others. So all those qualities are already there. Only thing that is missing is Krishna. Right? So it is relatively easier. Prabhupada also says the opposite. He says that it is difficult to preach to the people in the mode of goodness because the symptom of goodness is happiness. Right? But later on, Krishna will say that what is the symptom of the mode of goodness? The illumination and satisfaction. So you go to such a person and say that this material world is place of misery. He says, no, I'm fine. Because he's following he's in the mode of goodness. He's not experiencing that pain. Whereas you go to somebody who's in a mode of passion and you say this world is really difficult. They say, yeah, I know it's difficult. And I have so much problem. My business is not doing all this, that. And then you can engage the person. So they're both sides of the coin, but conventionally, the mode of goodness is considered to be a little bit more easier to plant the seed of Bhakti.
Sure. Thank you. I had another question, but it's not related to the topic, if it's okay to ask.
Okay. Why don't I go to the other two devotees, then I'll come back to you, if
Sure.
that's okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Rajiv Shyam Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. So this is again, I have a couple of questions actually. So one is related to verse 12.10 again. In the last portion of the verse, related to Karma Mishra Bhakti. Krishna says that you'll come to the perfect stage. Here, is perfect stage referred as the Shuddha Bhakti? And if so, does it, like Karma Mishra Bhakti, does it bypass Vaidhi Bhakti and go directly to Shuddha Bhakti?
So all the three verses are all talking about bhakti, right? And there's only, so like in your house, well, now houses have more than one door, but you have only one main door in your house, right? There's only one door through which a person can enter your house. That is Shuddha Bhakti, no other door. So if you have that concept clear in your mind, then you can understand that even though when Krishna is saying that will lead to it, he's saying it will lead to a process that will lead to a process to it. Right? But attaining Krishna, you have to go through the door of Shuddha Bhakti. Right?
And there is one more question. I don't know, maybe I'll wait for Ajit Krishna Prabhu to ask and then come back after Chaitanya response.
Sure.
So probably my question was actually related to what you said in the end, related to verse 12-20. Actually, that it was a very beautiful. I thought it was a very beautiful statement, in which you said that while other paths may take one to Krishna, bhakti is the path that brings Krishna to the devotee. So that seems to be a very, very fundamental and a very profound difference between the path of bhakti and all of the other. So my question basically is that in order to back that statement up for myself, I'm just trying to think. Of course, in verse 20, you had pointed out that Krishna says, "Bhaktesh te ativa me priya." So he's very, very dear to me. So is this conclusion that bhakti brings Krishna to the devotee and the other paths take the devotee to Krishna? Is this an inference, or is this a direct statement somewhere?
You mean, is there a verse that says something like this?
Yes, because I mean, in my own mind, I can kind of relate to the fact that if we say that bhakti brings Krishna to the devotee, because there are many verses that kind of support that statement, such as Bhaktes te ativa me priya, or where Krishna says, even in the Chaturshloki, he says that, so like he gives many clues that I help the devotee, the other paths, the devotee has to struggle on their own. So I was just thinking, is that the right way to think about it? I mean, that this is essentially an inference based on many statements that Krishna has made, versus is there just one verse or maybe two verses or a few verses that kind of make the statement?
I think you're right on both counts, that this is obviously an inference that is made based on the mood that Krishna displays.
Okay.
And I would be willing to even though we are not supposed to gamble, but I would be willing to bet a substantial amount of money that there are verses that also say that. Nothing comes to my mind right now.
Okay.
I'm thinking in the Nectar of Devotion, maybe there are, Rupa Goswami talks about it, but I won't be able to even point you in the general direction right now.
Okay, got it.
If you find something in your research, do share with me.
Certainly, Prabhu. If I do, it's a big if, but thank you so much. Statement,
Thank you, Prabhu.
very beautiful statement.
Yeah. So we have.
I think Gayatri Mataji has a question, but mine was more like a general. I've been receiving requests to understand the pattern of the exam. So if you could just repeat once before we close the call.
It's the same pattern as the module 1, that there are short answer questions, there are verses, and you get an hour and a half, sorry, to answer it. It's self-invigilated.
More like how many short answers, how many verses, and how many long answers, Prabhu?
I don't know that. I'll look at the question paper and maybe I'll send it to you and then you can post it.
Okay, sure, Prabhu. That'll be great. Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, Gayatri Mataji, please go ahead.
I just have a very short question. So when you describe the second position on the ladder of Bhakti, Vaidhi Bhakti, does this word mean anything? Does it have translation?
Vaidhi, so the root word of Vaidhi is Vidhi. So Vidhi means procedures. And Vaidhi means as per procedures. So that's how we do Vaidhi Bhakti. We do it procedurally, as per rules and regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll take 2 more questions and then call it a day. Rajiv Shyam Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. So in the yoga ladder, you mentioned that Karma Kanda leads to heaven and Jnana Yoga leads to Brahman. Ashtanga Yoga leads to Paramatma, and all the bhaktis will lead to Krishna. So if we are trying to do Karma Mishra Bhakti and try to do the Sadhana Bhakti, and then we fail by the end of the lifetime, we are born again, right? I think in the previous verses, in the previous chapters, I think Prabhupada, Krishna mentions that they will get into a pious life, and then we continue that process again, and up until we reach that Shuddha Bhakti stage, we are not going to be able to eligible to go back to Godhead. Is that the correct understanding?
At this stage of the discussion, that is a correct understanding. So there are further details in this, because when we study Bhagavatam, then we see that even lower stages of bhakti can take one to lower realizations. Like in the spiritual world, not all the rasas are the same. There is the grass, there is the tree, and there is the gopis. Right? So they're all perfected beings, the fact that they are in the spiritual world. So different stages of perfection take one to different destinations. But it's not a topic that even Prabhupada discusses at this point. So what our understanding is, which is also correct, what I'm saying is details, is that one needs to perfect the bhakti to be able to go back to Godhead. Right? And as you rightly pointed out, Krishna keeps giving us opportunities. He does not give us birth in pious families. He gave us birth in devotee families. Right? That's like devotees who have children. Prabhupada would say that Krishna has chosen a family so that a devotee can continue with his devotional service. So he would say, treat your children nicely. Not that others should treat them badly, but especially for devotees, he would say, treat your children nicely, because they are devotees that Krishna is giving them another chance. So that's how Krishna helps us. Okay, last question, Ajit Krishna Prabhu.
No, I am done, Prabhu. Sorry, I didn't take my hand down. I'm sorry about that.
No worries. Okay, so we're also a little over time, so I'll end over here. This is the end of the second module. The last module will begin with next week. And for those of you who have read the Bhagavad Gita with scrutiny, you know that most of the chapters in the third module are small chapters, 20 verse, 26 verse, 31 verse, with the exception of the 18th chapter, which is 78 verses. And the chapters are a little complex because we're dealing with Gyan. at one hand. At the other hand, they are little easier to understand because they talk about the material world, which we have a lot of first-hand experience. So even though it's a little, gyan is gyan, it's basically an analysis, but analyzing those things that we have experiential interaction with. So once again, I think as of now, about half of you have taken the first module exam. Half of you have yet not taken the first module exam, which is a little disappointing to me, frankly speaking. So those of you who have not, I would request you to take it, because you cannot take the module 2 exam unless you take the module 1 exam. And the more exams you don't take, the more the backlog will be there. And for those who have taken the module 1 exam, please go ahead and take the module 2 while everything is fresh in your mind. Okay, thank you. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo Anand Koti Vaishnavind ki jai.
Bye.
Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai. God.
Yeah,